Welcome to Beyond the Balance, where we redefine wealth and rebuild futures. Because financial freedom isn't just about numbers, it's about making your money work for you, your future, and your freedom. We're here to talk about wealth, growth, and the stories that prove you don't need a perfect balance to make a perfect comeback. Finances can feel overwhelming, but today's guest specializes in turning uncertainty into confidence. Shanice Pride is a licensed financial professional who crafts personalized strategies to help clients get out of debt, build wealth, and plan for retirement. Whether you're struggling with money management or looking to secure your financial future, this conversation will give you the insights you need to take control. Welcome to the show, Shanice.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you so much for the invite.
Of course. And before we dive in, I'd love to know more about your journey and just you as a person.
Absolutely. So kind of on the personal side, I definitely started out with engineering background. Went to Georgia Tech, which has, some of the nation's leading engineering programs. And kind of just being, the firstborn or eldest daughter, in my family, I think that I was just always coined as the kind of family financial manager or money manager, right?
Yeah, of
Um,
course.
so for me, it was definitely all about, how do I kind of make sure that I can continue to help and lead not only my siblings, but also my other family members, that probably weren't taught, the best money management tips or kind of tricks growing up. And how could I kind of rewrite that financial legacy for my family? So went off to school, studied that, then graduated with kind of a degree in industrial and systems engineering and started off
Wow.
working as a consultant. Worked my way up to a senior consultant, and I realized that it wasn't quite enough. I hit that pinnacle, I think, in most of our careers that we kind of aim for and strive for, and that's, hitting the six figures, right? Once
Right.
that we have quote unquote made it, you know? But I think for me, I just quickly realized that it wasn't as fulfilling as I thought it would be. It felt like that SpongeBob episode where he's just kind of going through the motions of the workday, uh,
Right.
and there's just no end to it. And I said, there just has to be more, right? So for me, I started to look around. I was like, okay, getting a second job is not on the docket. I don't want to be kind of pressed for time. I want to still be able to enjoy my time and enjoy my that time with loved ones. And kind of job hopping at the time, the job market it wasn't, and it still is not, very friendly for I think folks right now. Going back to school was also not an option. For me, I was like, I can't afford, to go into any more debt.
Right.
Then I ended up turning to entrepreneurship. And let me just tell you, I tried some of everything, right? And I think for me, it didn't quite stick or really take off until I really sat down and found, okay, what can I actually do that allows me to operate in my talents and my gifts right now? And I truthfully, I kept running away from that, right? I kept running away from this fact that I am just really good with numbers and I'm really good with money management, right? I've been doing it my entire life. And I just kind of, I guess, wanted to get away from it. But I realized, I think, maybe the middle of last year that, hey, this is something that I am actually exceptional at. So let's just keep going. So I
Right.
got connected with a brokerage that's actually a national brokerage right now. It's called the Wealth Academy. And I've been with them now for a little over 6 months. But let me just tell you, the amount of just people I've been able and families I've been able to help and just kind of really coach through, how do we leverage the right tools and the right vehicles to set you up for success long term. Um, and that's just kind of how I am here today. So,
That must make you feel really amazing being able to help people out through like a natural gift that you have.
yes, yes, it actually is very exciting, and it was definitely what I was looking for in terms of just being more fulfilling, right? Um, it's gotten to a point where it's not even work for me anymore. It's just something that I'm super passionate about and that I actually really do enjoy.
Wow, I mean, that's a beautiful thing. So, I guess when you were telling your story, I wanted to understand more about your engineering background at first. Was your engineering background specific to finance, or was it more of like a general kind of, degree that you had?
That's a great question. So it was in industrial and systems engineering, which, for anyone kind of listening, that is basically, folks will call it, a glorified business major, right? It's
Oh,
an
okay.
engineering business major is what folks call it. But I did concentrate, my concentration was in economic and financial systems. So yes, I did have a good background on that as well.
Okay, I mean, that is awesome. And being that you were able to transition to the Wealth Academy, which makes you happier as a person, but you can benefit other people, are you able to share maybe a success story from a client or something like that that you helped to transform a financial situation?
Oh, yes. Oh my gosh. Okay. So I would say most recently, I actually had a client that had two younger kids, and she had policies with another, I won't give the name. I don't want to,
Oh, no, please. Yeah, please.
another well-known, I guess, kids policy holder or policy carrier. And she was telling me, the amount of money that she was spending per month on them. And she was like, you know what, Shanice, I really just want to ensure that they are able to grow cash value and be able to access this money for, college funds and things like that as they get older. And I asked her, I said, hey, can I take a look at what you currently have? So we sat down, we did a little strategy review, and I was able to actually get her connected with another one of our brokers or our carriers, which actually offers an exceptional membership program that I love, especially for kids. It was a fraction of the cost, actually. The price that she was paying for one policy with the other brokerage or carrier, she was paying that for two policies with the new one.
Wow.
Yeah, and we were actually able to double her coverage for both kids.
Okay, that's wow.
That has alleviated a huge burden for them as they get ready to grow up and go off to college?
That to me makes me so happy because I know for a lot of people, I mean, average people, anyways, like we're so worried about debt and stuff like that that we never get the opportunity to like think about, the future.
I think it's all around kind of the strategy that we have in place for retirement planning, right? A lot of folks kind of have depended on or relied on the retirement stool, which was a term coined by, back in the day, it was coined by financial planners to describe the most common sources of retirement income. The first leg of that stool was pension plans, which as of today, back then when they first came about, pension plans, we had about 88,000 of them in the country.
Okay.
Today we have only about 35,000, and most of them are in federal positions.
Right.
That's already one leg of that stool already wobbly, right? The second
Yes.
one was Social Security, which experts project that by I think it's 2033 that Social Security will be completely depleted.
Okay.
So that's another source of income just already gone that most people were kind of banking on, right? And then the last and final leg was personal savings. And we've all kind of seen, the stats today that I think it's somewhere around 55 or 60% of Americans today don't have $1,000 set aside for an emergency. So we are kind of taught, this faulty and really just set for doom, method of retirement, right? And it's something that I seek to really rewrite and re-educate folks on because there is another way, right? And it's something that I have coined myself as the new retirement stool. And the first of that being, of course, the stock market, which is not new to anybody. We're all pretty much aware of that and how to leverage it, correct?
Right.
The second being real estate investing, which also a lot of people are aware of that. But then the last and final leg, and what we kind of specialize in at our brokerage, is annuities, which is essentially a self directed retirement plan or IRA.
Okay.
And it's something that will provide three guarantees, which I absolutely love. The first one being that your money is always protected. You will be able to capture the growth in the market. So as the market goes up, you're going to capture that growth. But to the first guarantee, as the market drops, you will not lose any money, right? And so
Wow.
the last one is that it guarantees lifetime income in retirement. And I feel that's the piece that most people don't know about. And they kind of think that the barrier of entry is high. And the reason most people don't know about it is because the only way you can even apply for this type of vehicle is with a life insurance company, right? You have to be connected to a broker that actually sells this product or provides that product. And a lot of ones don't, right? We go to our typical brokerages, like your Fidelity, your Charles and Schwab, your Vanguard,
Right.
and they're going to be more of your retail brokers that have those other traditional investment accounts, like your Roth IRA, your traditional IRA, or even just a traditional brokerage account. You're not going to see an annuity with them at all.
So, how can people who, are just average people who might be telling themselves, I can hardly scrape by an extra $100 a month, how can people who are essentially struggling, especially struggling with the economy, kind of look towards this kind of future and say to themselves, yeah, oh, well, maybe this is a possibility for me?
Yeah, absolutely. I promise you, we deal with that scenario more often than you think. I can probably count on one hand how many times people have come to me and said, you know what, I have this lump sum of money that I'm just ready to put into an annuity. Okay. It doesn't happen quite often, and that's okay. It was to be expected, right? Just
Of
because a lot
course.
of folks just didn't know. So we can't prepare for something we don't really know about. But there are two ways or two things that I typically am able to help clients with to kind of get on this track, right? The first one being leveraging either an old 401k or an old investment account, right? So that's if you've recently left a job, maybe in the last 5 to 10 years, you would not believe the amount of people that have for money left in 401ks that they have nothing, they know nothing about, right? Or maybe they've reached that age of 59 and a half and that money is just sitting there and it's like, okay, well, let's see if we can move that money to a more secure retirement vehicle for you, you know? So that is
Okay.
kind of the first thing that I'll look at for folks. Even for myself, I'm pretty young. I am 27, and I myself just realized or found out that I could move my 401k, and it's something that is going to pay me huge dividends when I actually do hit retirement age. I think it was somewhere upwards of $12 million a year. So
Okay. Yes.
yeah, I'm telling you, it's something that not a lot of folks know about, and they think that it's something that's far beyond reach. And I promise you, it's not. Our team, we definitely offer, free consultations to kind of really sit and go through this strategy session with you. But that's the first kind of method or path that I take people on. The second is, if we do at least have $100, that we can set aside, we can get you into something monthly that would allow you to essentially save up for that initial investment to put into your annuity. And then once you hit that, we can roll you over to that annuity and get you set up and ready to go. That's one option. The other option is if you really do just want to, start off a little bit smaller, maybe grow some cash value still, but maybe you just really can't commit to $100 a month. Then we'll kind of take some time, take a step back, and really look at what other options are out there for you. Because there are other options, right? There
Right.
are other options to make sure that you're allowing your money to grow the best way possible. So if you've ever heard of an IUL, Index Universal Life Policy, those are out there and definitely possible. Even if you have heard of a universal life product, right? Those are also available things that I typically will recommend and offer to clients that say, you know what, I just don't have it right now, Shanice. But I know that this is something that's important to me and I want to get started today and not delay. So, yeah.
Okay. Wow. Okay. So I guess that kind of answers my next question. I mean, you kind of slashed all those insecurities in half, or at least what I would think of for, the average person. I guess, a lot of what I hear from people is just, I just can't do it.
Mm,
And to me, it seems like, you and your team would be saying, Yes, there are options. You just have to be knowledgeable. How do you, suggest that people, kind of find that knowledge and like sift through like all the bad news and, negative speak that's going around?
Oh my gosh, that is such a good question. For me, I'm going to tell you before I got started in this business myself, I was definitely a YouTube university student.
Yeah.
There is so much free information out there. I don't recommend anyone pay for anything because I promise you there are so many free resources out there. I will say two channels that I looked at heavily before I got into this, and they definitely cover really all sides of the gambit in terms of everything that I just mentioned and securing a kind of guaranteed retirement plan for you. The first one is Our Rich Journey. It's this amazing couple, Amon and Christina, and they go through all of these topics on the stock market and investing in the stock market, down to the nitty gritty, So I really do love them. I definitely started there to learn more about how should I invest in the stock market and what's kind of the best way to go about that. And then, of course, shameless plug, but I promise you, I looked at this before I even started this business. It is the Wealth Academy, our YouTube page, right? So we have a lot of videos up there that are debunking a lot of the myths that folks have around life insurance in general, right? The first thing that comes to mind when most people hear life insurance is death, right?
Yes. Yeah,
We think
literally.
that it can only cover us or help our family and friends out, our beneficiaries out once we pass. But the thing that I love about our brokerage and the carriers that we partner with is that we offer living benefits, which is something not a lot of folks have heard about, they don't know about. And it's a way to kind of really make sure that, God forbid anything happens to you, critical, chronic, terminal illness, while you are living, you are able to access, in most cases, up to 90% of that death benefit to help you continue on living life as normal, right? Or as
Wow.
close to
Okay.
normal as possible, And I think that's something that a lot of folks just really have misconceptions around. So that is a great YouTube channel out there as well that I definitely started off with to not only educate myself, but also share it with family, right? Because yeah, a lot of times coming from you, folks can be tone deaf, right?
Well, yes, absolutely.
Right. You have kids and you try to talk to your kids and reprimand them. They just sound like, oh gosh, mom, like you're just getting on my nerves, right? But let someone else outside of you come and say the exact same thing, and they're like, you know what? I should listen.
Oh
So
my
it's kind of the
gosh.
same thing.
That okay. So, I mean, I even just wrote that stuff down myself, so I will be checking those out, and I
Yeah.
hope other people do as well. And so I'm wondering, we're talking about, saving for the future,
Mhm.
but one thing that I know that people are like really scared of probably is, well, how do I pay off all these debt and also save for the future? Or, I have to start with debt first. What do you say to that?
That is a great one. I would say that a lot of times there are definitely ways to. So for me, the first thing that I did was really look at my budget each month, right? And I kind of live by or try to live by as close to as this is possible a zero sum budget. And I think that was something that is touted by Dave Ramsey. And it's
Yes.
each month, how do you kind of allocate your money and your funds to make sure that the most important things are being paid off first? So for me, that is something that I do heavily. Another thing that really helped me in terms of paying down debt and sticking to it, I love education. I love reading. So there's this book called Profit First. And I forget the author right now, but let me see if I can maybe grab it. Okay, it's by Mike. Oh my gosh, I'm going to butcher his last name. I think it's Michael Wicks. But it is a book. It is a book about business. But I will say that in the book, he also says, this could also be applicable to personal finances, and I would 100% agree. And one of the things that he talks about there is having separate accounts. separate like bank accounts. So there's like a separate checking account for expenses and a separate one for income. And kind of the logic or theory behind that is that you want to kind of get yourself into the habit of becoming like this well oiled machine. You want to become more disciplined about where your money is going and coming from, right? And so for
Yes.
me, I found that it really helps in being disciplined and saying, like, okay, this is the amount of money I have set aside for me personally. If I don't have it, I'm not spending it, right? But it also helps to make sure that all of my expenses are paid off on time, even ahead of time, right? And it's also allowed me to see more clearly and pinpoint more clearly where exactly maybe I'm spending a little too much. What could I cut back on? Do I really need that subscription, or do I really need, that extra maybe facial this month or something? Like, do I really need that, or is it a want? And
Exactly.
what can I actually clean up? And I think for me that has been extremely, extremely helpful. I've become very methodical with it to the point where it's just become so routine for me. It's not even a second thought. Every time I get paid, that money goes into one account. I move it all to another account to make sure that everything else is paid out. And you just kind of keep going like that. So I would highly recommend that book, Profit First, as a read.
And excuse me. I'm a big reader myself, and I'm like I had this book sitting in my library, and I haven't picked it up yet.
Oh my
So
gosh.
I know I'm definitely gonna actually have to sit down and read it. But I love that you talked about the separate accounts kind of philosophy, is because I'm currently reading Your Rich BFF by Vivian too, and
Yes.
she
Okay.
also talks about that. I love her book is so in depth and informational, and I'm sure since you recommend Profit First, I'm definitely gonna see similarities in the two.
Yes.
But you know, zero based spending, that's how my budget is, and like Vivian too also talks about value based spending as well. So like what you said, do I really need that extra facial? Do I really need this or that? She's like, well, if you really want it, then do it, but make sure you pay yourself first and you're not overspending. Blah blah blah.
Yep.
But I when you really narrow it down to, well, I simply don't have it, or oh, I do have it. People really get the availability of, wow, I didn't have to increase my income. All I had to do was make a budget. And I'm like a firm believer in that whole budget thing.
Hmm. I
So,
think, yeah.
oh, please go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, no. I would say, I'll say first, yeah, Profit First is definitely something I try to read once a year. So I would highly recommend that. But yes, also, I would say, to that point of value based spending and just paying yourself first. Now, I'm not saying there are definitely times, in the zero based budget where it's like, okay, can I actually set some money aside this month to maybe get my hair done or get my nails done or maybe go out to dinner with friends? Because I do think that those things are important, right? I don't think that you should become so entangled in it or so enthralled in it that you forget to take time for yourself, right? Forget to
Right.
pour into yourself because that is something that is very easy to lose sight of on this journey of becoming debt free. So maybe it's, once a quarter. You stuck to your budget, you stuck to your goals, you paid off that credit card or you paid down that bill, even to some degree, right? If you stuck to whatever you set out for that goal for the quarter, reward yourself at the end of it. We are, individuals that really thrive off of that. I don't know anyone that can really just continue on for extended periods of time and just not do anything, not do anything
Right.
for themselves. So I definitely say try to find ways to incorporate that into the budget if possible. It's not something you have to do every week for sure. For me, I try to do once a quarter, and just go from there. Have something for yourself to look forward to because this journey, it can be long, it can seem daunting, but you don't want to get yourself in the habit or in the mindset of just self-sacrificing all the time, you know?
Right. Exactly. And so if somebody, they manage to, hey, they pay their debts, they manage to, get into that habit of their budget and, treating themselves, and they feel like they're really getting to that point of, hey, like I want my money to work for me. How do you suggest that people approach investing, especially in the stock market, because we did talk about annuities and, life insurance and stuff like that. But how do people, start to play the game a little bit?
I love that question so much. So for me, I'm gonna go back and recommend again the Our Rich Journey YouTube channel. I promise you, I got started investing in my stock market portfolio. I want to say in 2018. I had never
Okay.
touched the stock market before, never looked at it, never done anything with it, right? And that YouTube channel, I'm not kidding you. Go back from the very beginning. I watched every single video. They break down, in layman's term, how to get started, right? They will tell you the brokerages to start with or give you some ideas and recommendations. They will actually walk through and help you set those brokerages up or kind of walk through how to set those up. I will say, my brokerage that I'm with right now that I do love is Fidelity. They have some of the best, low cost to no cost assets. And then also, too, which is very quick and seamless to kind of get up and going. But I would say recommend folks to look into index funds or ETFs starting out. An index fund is essentially, a large pool of, say, companies all in one, and it allows you to ensure that you're not overextending yourself on any one company, right? So you'll have index funds like a total stock market index fund, or you'll have like a large cap index fund, right? That's going to track I think it's 500 highest performing companies or whatnot. And so for me, that's something that I love to do. And I still do to this day. The percentage of my portfolio that is on single stocks like, Apple or Microsoft or, Dell or something like that are very small. I try to keep it less than 10%. And the reason for that being is I don't want to be tied to a chart. I don't want to have to sit on the earnings calls. I don't want to have to be
Right.
enthralled with this company and their performance that is going to drive me crazy, right? I want to buy back my time. And so for me, index funds allows me to do that. Because you know what? If Microsoft is performing poorly this month, Apple is 9 times out of 10 killing it, So the overall growth in my portfolio is still there. It's kind of essentially a set it and forget it type asset that I really do love and recommend for a lot of folks just getting started, or maybe you just know that you want to diversify your investments, but you don't want to really become maybe a day trader. You
Right. Yeah.
a passive kind of trader in that sense. So I would highly recommend starting there.
Okay. And for people who may be feeling behind on saving, what advice do you have for them?
That's a great question. I say to folks, it's a fair feeling, a fair way to feel, but I will say, and it's kind of the quote, the best time to start was yesterday. The next best time is today. Right? You can go
Right.
back and recoup that time, and it's completely okay. But I highly encourage folks, not to get down on themselves so much to the point where they don't do anything. They just continue not doing anything. That is probably the worst thing you could do,
Fair.
right?
Yeah.
So like, let's just get started today. What can we do today to at least get us maybe up halfway there, a portion of the way there, and understand that something is still better than nothing. That's really the best piece of advice that I can give folks, and really to just be patient and forgive themselves. You don't know
Yeah.
what you don't know. I think this world of personal finance can be so intimidating for most because a lot of times it's thought to be reserved for a select few. And it's like, no, it's accessible to us all. We just weren't taught these things in school, you know?
Of
But
course.
that's okay.
Yes.
That's okay. We have the time now. We're here now. So let's make the best of it.
And okay, so I love that you said that because that brings me to my next question, which is how important is mindset when it comes to financial success?
Oh, that is so great. Oh my gosh. It is so important. So, so, so important. One of my favorite, quotes or mantras is what you think about, you bring about. So if you continue to tell yourself that you are broke, that you are behind the eight ball, that you're never going to reach that goal, you're absolutely right. You're never going to reach it. You are broke, you are behind the eight ball, and it's just going to always be that way. But as soon as you flip your mindset and you start to speak life into your circumstance, into your situation, the it's kind of like the red car theory, you know? When you see a red car once, you start seeing them all over the place, right?
Yeah, exactly.
When you see one way to invest and grow your money, the world of opportunity opens up for them all, right? And then you start seeing these millions of other ways that you can actually reach that goal a lot quicker. You start getting connected with the right folks. You start plugging into the right groups that really encourage and push you along the way and teach you things that you didn't even know about before. But it's all because you flipped your mindset and you committed to sticking with it, right? So, yeah, I think that's my take on it.
Wow. Okay. And you know what? I absolutely believe that too. And that can be applied to any and every part of your life, right? That's how you kind of breed success.
Yes, absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
so that makes me want to ask you now, because, people, sometimes when we get extremely motivated and we're like, yeah, I'm going to do it, I'm going to start this, I'm going to get good, it's going to be great. What happens when life happens? They kind of fall down and, they had everything together and something happens and things just totally get messed up. Maybe they get laid off from a job, they can't find something, the money stops flowing in. How do you recommend that people find or create or, depend on themselves during financial uncertainty?
That's a great one. I feel like we have talked about this so much um, in kind of my brokerage as well, because we do have like a training program that's kind of part of what we do. And one of the things that I love that really stuck out recently in a recent training is we've all heard the success loves speed, right? But the other part of that equation that a lot of folks have not heard about, maybe we overlook, is that speed loves clarity, right? And I think a lot of times we get stuck in the beginning part, right? Success loves speed. So we get this goal of, say, maybe hitting $1 million investment portfolio. So we just start running, we start going, we start side hustling, we start selling everything in our place, we start, maybe baking goods and selling them and everything like that, right? But then, to your point, let's say COVID happened, right? And everyone's locked
Right.
inside. No one can go anywhere. And then we kind of get down on ourselves. We say, man, this is not for me. It wasn't going to happen, right? But we've missed the other side of it. We've missed the clarity piece of it. We didn't slow down enough and take the time in the beginning to actually set aside a strategy that would help us get there, right? We didn't really sit down and go through and think through the business plan. We just jumped into it. So that's what I say is the first thing. The second thing, and the reason why I think that, or the piece of advice I give folks when they kind of find themselves in this slump, and even myself, because I have definitely done this as well, right, is you have to keep your whys or your why in front of you daily. And that is, why are you doing this? What does this mean for you? You got to be able to describe it a little bit more than just, I want to hit $1 million portfolio, but attack
Right.
emotion. That, right? We are emotional beings. And I think a lot of time we get stuck in the logic, but logic only gets you so far. We have to go back to and really embody this childlike imagination and just fearlessness, right? When we're kids, we don't have any fear unless someone stops you and say, hey, don't do that. That's not safe.
Right.
But when you get yourself back and you allow yourself to get back into this childlike state of mind and just dream as big as, the sky, even beyond that, the things and the doors that will open for you are unfathomable, right? So that is something that I recommend, keeping your why in front of you daily and attaching emotion to it. What does hitting this $1 million portfolio do for you? What does that stock portfolio do for you? Does it mean that you get to spend more time with your kids? Does it mean that you get to leave that job that's sucking the life out of you? Does that mean that you
Right.
buy this vacation home in Costa Rica that you can take your family to, on holidays, on vacations. What does it mean? Attach that emotion to it outside of just the number, outside of just the logic, right? And I promise 9 times out of 10, that is going to pull you up out of that slump more than anything will.
Wow. Okay. Well, I mean, that was beautiful. So thank you. I mean, that made me think as well. I also have some goals that I'm working through myself. I mean, like you said, you're pretty young. I'm also very young. I'm 22 years old,
Oh
and
my
so
God.
I'm trying to find some credibility here in the financial field and stuff like that. And so that's my biggest why right now. And it's making me think, oh, well, why do you want to do that? Well, because this is a topic that I obviously love talking about, and I want to dive into that personally as a person. And so I'm going to, kind of take all of your advice and sit down with that.
Yeah.
But
I, I
because, I'm sorry.
I would say if I could flip it back on you for just a second, because I love that. Kudos to you for starting this podcast. Honestly, this is really one of the best ways that you're going to build that credibility in a space. I promise you. Um,
Thank
Post,
you.
I don't know if you post this on, other outlets or podcast outlets, maybe YouTube or Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Even if you had, like a social media page, posting snippets of it there. There are so many people out there that are looking for this information. Beyond the Balance is an exceptional name for this. So
Thank you.
definitely, I'm so proud of you and so happy that you just said, that, hey, I need to sit with this a little bit more. And think, what's the bigger picture? What's the bigger reason why I started this podcast? Outside of, wanting to learn more or dig deeper myself, what is it that you want to be able to provide people? What do you want people to walk away with after listening to your podcast episodes? I love that.
Well, I can actually answer that right now. I want people, and I actually, if we could just have a conversation really quickly, you know, I've always loved finance. I mean, I can remember from being a teenager, like being enamored by, my family. I would always wonder, like, how do you always end up on vacation? And they talk about credit, and they would talk about, oh well, yeah, we put it on our credit cards and we pay it off, and blah blah blah. And I'm like, what the heck? What is that? I turned 18 years old, and I found out my dad did this awesome thing for me that I don't know if a lot of people know about, where they take their child's social number and they put it as a authorized user. And my dad was building my credit for me, and I never even known that. And it's pretty swaggish to kind of pop out at 18 like, oh, I already have credit. Nobody else knows what credit is. And just building that foundation of, oh my gosh, I can be an average person and learn how to build success with essentially nothing. I'm making minimum wage. I but I can find wealth and success. And even though I have built up debt like most people in America do, I can overcome it. I mean, it's hard,
Yeah.
but that's the first step. And so I want to help other people, find their way to overcoming that debt. And that's really how Beyond the Balance came to be about, overcoming that fear of growth, pretty
Yeah.
much.
Oh my gosh, that is so. I love that so much, and it's such like relatable topic that you're absolutely right. A lot of folks just think is beyond them. They just kind of succumb to it and say, you know what, it just is the way that it is. The system is just out to get me. But there
Yeah.
are ways around it, and you're going to do amazing with it. I'm so excited for you in this podcast.
Thank you. And so, I mean, this was so insightful. I'm actually excited to get up and look into all this stuff that you've mentioned. So, I really do have one last question for you. And I just like to know, for everybody listening and including myself, what is one piece of financial advice that you can just say, take this and run with it?
That's a good question. Oh my gosh, I feel like that's so hard. Oh, a piece of financial advice or just advice in general?
You know what? Advice in general.
Okay. Um, Let me. I would say it is the fact that change is inevitable, but
Yes,
growth
yeah.
is optional. And that I think that goes back to something you were saying earlier that um, feeling like you're behind the eight ball or feeling like you haven't quite done enough will keep you in the snares of tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
But life is still going to move on. You're still going to grow older. You're still going to maybe get a new job or maybe you're going to grow a family. The change is still going to happen, right? But whether or not you grew from that past, place to today, that's completely up to you, right? Time itself does not guarantee your growth. It does guarantee your change, that you will change, but it
Yeah.
does not guarantee your growth. So I think that just being more tuned into that piece and being more relentless and determined to really changing your situation and growing from it, right? Go with the discomfort. I think a lot of times folks get so turned off by discomfort and being uprooted out of, that comfy little blanket of the way it's
Yeah.
always been done. But it's like discomfort is the language of growth. You cannot get to the other side without being a little bit uncomfortable. It's going to ruffle some feathers, and that is completely okay. I always remind folks or ask folks the question, wouldn't you agree that failing as your future self is better than succeeding as your current self, right?
Yeah.
Every time you fail or you kind of don't hit the mark on something that you're aiming towards for your future self, you learn something new.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
one step forward rather than continuing to sit in the complacency of your current situation. That is probably the worst thing you could do. So that's my one piece of advice. Change is inevitable, but the growth is optional and is up to you. So
Well, I don't think there's any other way to end the show today. And so I would just like to know, how can people kind of connect with you and find you? And if they really have questions or even want to work with you, how can we find you?
absolutely. Best thing I'd say, if you want to maybe just see some of the content and just kind of see the background there, I would say definitely follow me on social media at All with Shanice. So ALLWITH and then that first name. I can be found on Instagram as well as TikTok. I believe TikTok is just with Shanice.
Thank you so much, Shanice. Please expect to hear more from you. You were so insightful, and I know that I'm grateful for your advice today, and I know many others will be as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for tuning into today's episode of Beyond the Balance. If this conversation inspired you, be sure to subscribe and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Keep redefining wealth, rebuilding your future, and taking control of your financial journey. And always remember, you don't need a perfect balance to make a perfect comeback.